Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the 118th Congress of the United States of America. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about the 118th Congress of the United States of America. It's going to be broken down in a couple of parts, but before we get into that, please excuse the green tinge behind my head. That is not because I'm a reptilian. I'm still having issues with light since we restarted this, so just bear with me and I'll get it figured out. Two, I didn't get anything posted on Monday because I was traveling and it was just really hectic, and I was just exhausted. So I apologize for that. It won't happen again. Now, before we get started, please like, share, comment. That's the best thing you can do for the channel. If you disagree with what I'm saying, then let me know in the comments. We'll have a civil discussion about it. I mean, civil discord is one of the things in our world that I think we're really losing, and you and I could be part of fixing that. Now, the 118th Congress, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some background and some of the people that were elected to it, and then we're going to go into some of the changes and what some people are calling a debacle that became the election for Speaker of the House. And I don't think it was a debacle. I think it was actually a pretty positive thing. So some of the people elected, and I actually noticed this trend probably about 2016, 2018. I've just watched it grow since then. Now, now that the 118th Congress is in session, they're doing so with 97 veterans representing 36 states, the most members with military experience since 2015. There's 5 more veterans in Congress now than there was in the last Congress. It's a small increase, only 18%. Well, it's up from 17 to 18%. What's significant about it is it's the first time since 1965 the number of veterans has gone up by 5 or more individuals. And only the 4th time in the last 50 years there's been any increase at all in veterans elected. And I think that's pretty cool for a lot of reasons. And I'll go into that, but I want to give you some other facts. The new Congress has 80 veterans in the House, 17 in the Senate. Now, there are 7 female veterans in Congress, the most for any session that we've ever had. And I think if you look at percentages for the number of women that serve in the military, we're actually doing pretty good. And I think that's awesome. And I'm just really hoping that even more of those veterans, both male and female, decide to run. Because what I started noticing is there's more and more veterans running, even if they're not being elected, but they're taking some of these incumbents to task and making them stand up for their stances on a lot of things, up to and including Iraq and Afghanistan, which I personally think is a great thing. Now, this Congress has 19 newly elected veterans. That means either somebody didn't run or they beat an incumbent, which I think is even better. I'm not worried about what political party they are, because I think one of the strengths these veterans are going to bring to the fight is they will actually not be above crossing aisles and shaking hands and coming up with plans. Not plans that benefit Democrats or benefit Republicans. Plans where the Democrats and Republicans both lose a little bit, but the American people benefit, which is what we've been sorely lacking for quite a long time. Now, of this group of veterans, 60 served at least part of their careers in the 2000s. Where's this other fact I was looking at because I found it interesting? Yeah, excuse me. I may have deleted one of my notes by accident. But I think the stat I saw was roughly 50% of them had also served in combat in the 2000s, as well as the rest that served during the 2000s, which I think is great, because what that will do is that will take some of these members of Congress and the Senate, the House and the Senate, and the administration to task before they commit us to 20-year wars that can't be won. They'll be the ones to encourage, yes, Al Qaeda was wrong. So we're going to go into what we have to do to eradicate what we can of Al Qaeda, and then leave once that's done, and use our over-the-horizon capabilities to keep people in check. Because we do have those capabilities. You see it in Yemen. You see it in Somalia. You may not exactly agree with it, but it beats putting boots on the ground. And it beats going into a 21-year war, the longest war in the history of our country, where we spend trillions of dollars, end up with how many dead, only so the Taliban can come back to power. Which, oh, by the way, the Taliban is now, always has been, and was a political party. They did not become terrorists until 9/11. They were a political party that came to power in Afghanistan. Well, guess what? After 21 years, a lot of American blood and gold, they're still in power. So what did we actually accomplish other than leading to the death of both Americans, Afghan civilians, and Afghans that were brave enough to put on a uniform and try to serve their country and make it a better place? And yes, with the way we pulled out, we did let them down, and that was a failure. I've already done a video on that. I'll post a link to it in the description if you want to go back and look at it. I'm not going to clarify that, but what I really think that the biggest strength these veterans will have is they're not facing IEDs. They're not facing Al-Qaeda or AQI or Jaish al-Mahdi. So what do they have to lose by crossing the aisle and working with each other, regardless of party, for the best for the American people? I really think that is going to be the strength as more veterans run for and get elected to political office. I made the comment a lot of times, I probably made it in a video at some point, 10 years after World War II, veterans controlled everything in this country. And where I don't feel you need to be a veteran to serve in any political office, up to and including the president, because if you do your history, or if you do your research, some of our military leaders have made some of our worst presidents. So I'm not saying it should be a requirement. What I'm saying is, in this day and age, with the education and maturity that veterans have and what they're bringing to this, I think they'll be willing to work with the other party for the good of the American people, which is what we're sorely lacking now. And that's something that they can really work on that we haven't had for at least the last 15 years.
Naughty Black Dog says, like, subscribe, and share.
As we go into the last segment, the nomination of the Speaker of the House. Well, looks like there are some issues there. And a lot of those issues come down to the reason Nancy Pelosi maintains power with the Democrats is she is a great fundraiser. Now, as we're discussing fundraisers, she kind of gets everybody in lockstep based on that. The difference is they swallow their principles and they become hypocrites so that she can assume that position of power and they have availability of those funds. Now, Kevin McCarthy, his strength for the Republican Party is, guess what? He's great at raising funds. Although this time coming in, Republicans took him to task on a few things, and they made demands of him. And he had to coalesce to those demands before they would elect him Speaker of the House. I think this is a good sign, because I am a firm believer that partisan politics is Republicans are all going to vote this way, Democrats are all going to vote this way, and are always going to vote against each other, are useless. There is nothing good about that for the American people. President Bill Clinton, who I have very little respect for, the one thing I have respect for him for, he and Newt Gingrich were able to figure out how to get government to work together for the good of the American people. I may not agree with everything he did, but they were able to do that. What we need now is similar to that. Now, because these members of Congress are holding Kevin McCarthy to task on what they believe is right, there will be changes. Nancy Pelosi made fun of it and said it was a debacle and this and that. Well, guess what? Nancy Pelosi has been in office in one way, shape, or form since before I was born. I'm 50. I've been alive for half a century, and she's been in office. So you know what that means? The only thing she cares about is power and enriching herself. Because how does somebody that makes less than $250,000 a year become a multimillionaire? Ask that of members of Congress. I talked about in the first segment, the veterans coming in. It's 19 newly elected veterans. We need to get rid of more incumbents. In fact, let's set an age limit on Congress. Here's my thing with the American people. There's a minimum age to get elected. So let's do this. Let's put a maximum age. The oldest you could be to run for Congress or the House, let's make it 40. The oldest you could be to run for the Senate is 50. And you get one term out of that. Now, as far as governors, lieutenant governors, president, vice president, whole different ballgame. But in the legislature, let's set a maximum age. We have a minimum age. Let's set a maximum age. So that way we can get these people out of there. Because you know what? You get a bunch of 35-year-olds in there. Yeah, maybe they don't know exactly how government works, like some of the professional politicians we have now. You know what they do know how to do? Figure stuff out. And fine, they go for 2 years and they can't figure anything out. Would it really be any worse than what we have now? Or we go back to what I've said before. The House has a 2-year plan. The first year is nothing but the budget, and that is members of the House are going line by line through that budget, and they're voting on each separate department. Every spending bill stands alone. No more omnibus spending bills. We actually go through and do this. And if a program doesn't work, that way it'll be identified and it can be cut. That's their first year. Their second year, they can tackle all these other things, unless there is an emergency that is agreed upon by the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House. And the President signs off on it, like a waiver program. And those are the only things they could vote on the first year other than the budget. And that budget is a 2-year budget. The second year, then they work on their pet projects. They build the bridge to nowhere. They fund studies on how thick ketchup is when it comes out of bottles. Because, yes, those are all things that do exist, and you can research them yourself. Now, shifting gears a little bit, one of the things that has been said by Kevin McCarthy is, now that they're in power, 3 Democrats will be removed from committees. And I don't believe in doing tit for tat, just like these investigations, which will be the next thing we're going to talk about. But the 3 people he's talking about taking off of committees, I do understand, and I'm going to explain to you my standpoint on why I think it's a good thing. Marjorie Taylor Greene was removed from committees based on something that was said before she was ever elected. On the other hand, you have old Adam Schiff, who, as part of the Intelligence Committee, has made comments to the press, and other things are believed to have been leaked by his staff that were considered classified in nature. So yes, remove him from the Intelligence Committee. Madam Ilhan Omar, and yes, that's not derogatory. That's actually how you're supposed to refer to a member of the House. Well, let's see. She's done nothing but badmouth this country after coming here as a refugee, which is her right. I will not take that away from her. She has the whole marriage debacle. You can research that on your own, because everything I found about that, nobody could say for sure yes or no whether or not she married somebody that's illegal to marry in most states in the United States. And according to her, did it through Islamic custom as opposed to a legal marriage, but then sealed it as a legal marriage. And oh, by the way, there's a tax return debacle where she forgot who she was legally married to when she filed her taxes, which I don't know if you guys know this, but that's considered fraud. And I've gone through two pretty contentious divorces, but I never forgot who I was married to when it was time to file taxes. I'm just saying. That's just me. Now, last but not least, Eric Swalwell. Eric, bruh, you slept with Ling Ling, a Chinese spy. You slept with a Chinese spy. If you're that stupid, there's no way you didn't either say something or leave classified documents out from the House Intelligence Committee. You really expect me to believe nothing came out of your mouth, or she wasn't able to find anything from that in your office or at your place or wherever you and Ling Ling hooked up? Eric, bruh, you're out. Yes, I agree with all 3 of those. I mean, do you want Schiff and Swalwell on the Intelligence Committee so they can leak information and sleep with spies? Or Ilhan Omar helping to shape the foreign policy of our country when she can't even decide where she stands on LGBTQ based on her faith? I mean, it is what it is. Now, as this Congress works their way through session, please come up with plans to benefit the American people, not yourselves, not your parties. Stand up for what's right. That's why people elected you. Do not forget where you came from. To the veterans, do your part to keep us from being dragged into these wars. If we're going to go to war, then make it for the right reasons, make it with a mission we can achieve, and then come home. That's really all I have to say. I hope everybody has a great evening. Share, remember, like, subscribe, and share. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please do that. If you dislike what I have to say, then go ahead and let me know in the comments. We'll go ahead and have a civil discussion about it. Everybody have a great evening.